Alors bonsoir tout.
Good evening, and welcome to the regular public meeting of the Dieppe City Council this 23rd of March 2015. We're just a few moments late, but that's part of it. It was scheduled. I hope you enjoyed the commercials that you saw during the delay. That's okay. So welcome to everyone. Welcome. Now, for the prayer of counsel, give me, God, the serenity to accept the things that I can change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We do have quorum this evening. Are there any conflicts of interest by council members? I don't see any lights coming on, so let's move on to the adoption of the agenda. It's been moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by Councillor Brideau. Questions on the agenda? If not, all those in favor will say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The agenda is adopted. Presentations, inquiries, and petitions. 7.1, inquiries by council members. Inquiries directed to the Kodiak Regional RCMP. Mr. Beauchesne, welcome here this evening. Are there any inquiries by council members, any requests or follow-up questions? Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mr. Beauchesne. I don't have a question, rather a suggestion. This morning, in my email, I received a scam letter from somebody who was pretending to be from Revenue Canada saying that he owed me money. And of course, I had to click on the link in order to get the information to supply them, to provide them with. My suggestion would be this: when this kind of thing happens, it's very difficult to know who to complain to. I recognized right away that it was a scam. For two reasons, actually. First of all, I've always asked Revenue Canada to contact me in French. But I didn't know who to refer this to. And after about 10 minutes on the phone, I finally found who I should talk to. Perhaps when this kind of thing occurs, you usually know about it before we do, but perhaps you could report it, you could send out messages, you could give messages on the radio or announce it in the papers that this kind of thing is going on. Where do we have to send our request? Thank you, Councillor. And I think we're on the internet live right now. Yes, this is something that is very frequent, and what you did was the right thing. You reacted with caution, and that's what we do advise people to do. And then call us. The first point of contact is the regional police force. We are your regional police force. If you have a question, please don't hesitate to call the administrative line. And that's a good starting point. Now, what we do at the RCMP, we take this information and then we collect information nationally, all of these informations that will help us in our investigations, because quite often there are boiler room issues, and so we send out information on all this kind of issues. So when you have this kind of email, you call us and we will document it, and it might help in an investigation. And Mr. Beliveau also talked to Jamie George, and we're working towards preparing announcement or advice. We don't want to flood the public either. Sometimes it gets to be too much, but we're trying to work on it with good planning and with good forethought. Should we call the crime number, the number that is crime? It's a Kodiak Police Force regional number. You call it, and then we register the complaint, and somebody will contact you. Thank you. I don't have the number offhand. No, I don't have the number on me. the worst thing to ask somebody who just got transferred here a few months ago what his phone number is. The administrative number. The administration number. 857-2400. Councillor Gaudette. Yes, I received the same thing. But I think my email was in French. He might be familiar with the fact that I sit on the Comité de Francisation. So I didn't even bother reading it. I just deleted it. It wasn't an enormous amount they were going to send me back. In any case, I didn't say that the amount wasn't worth making 3 or 4 phone calls, but I just deleted it. Thank you, Mr. Gaudette. Thank you. I think there are a few other people who talked to me about it today. I think it's something that's happening frequently. So if there are no further questions, you are free to go. It's nice to say you are free to go to a police officer, but have a good evening. Thank you. We are now on questions by members of the public. Good evening. Good evening. How are you? Yeah, great. I have a email from Revenue Canada as well. No, I have a question. I've looked at the new plan proposed for the rezoning. A 26 buffer zone is being proposed. I have a question on this buffer zone. Now, will this zone, can it be touched by other developers? Can trees be cut down in this buffer zone? Can anything happen to it? I just want to find the conditions here, find the exact wording in the conditions. Generally speaking, when it's a buffer zone, it has to be respected forever, in perpetuity. And there will be trees planted that is necessary in that zone. So we can validate the conditions as necessary, and we can make sure that it is in perpetuity.
Merci. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions du public?
Any other questions by members of the public? If not, we move on to item 9, adoption of the minutes. For the minutes of the regular council meeting of March 9th, 2015. Would somebody like to move the adoption? It's been moved by Councillor Gaudette, seconded by Councillor Dallaire. On the question. All those in favor will say aye. All those in favor of the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of March 9th will say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. It is carried as presented. Item 10.1, finance. Sponsorship. Mr. Melanson. Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. Yes, we received a request for a financial contribution from the Moncton YWCA for an event called 2015 Women of Distinction. Now, the difference this year, because it's the 9th year of this event, the event will be held in Dieppe. This hadn't been scheduled in terms of our sponsorship for 2015, but we suggested that we use the non-committed funds of the council. This was, you have this before you for consideration, and if you want to approve it, you can do so through a resolution this evening. Thank you. Who would like to read the resolution? Councillor Béliveau. Your Worship, that Council authorizes a financial contribution of $2,500 towards the purchase of a Mécène sponsorship be granted to the YWCA Moncton for the 2015 Women of Distinction event, and authorizes this expenditure be defrayed from account number 1-2-20-28-2310, 2015 grants to organizations. And I so move, Your Worship. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Béliveau, seconded by Councillor Dallaire. On the question. Mr. Béliveau, I'm sorry, Mr. Gaudette. The amount mentioned here, what had been provided for other unspecified amounts that might come up during the year. Do we still have a $10,000 amount in there? I thought we had already taken some of the funds out. If memory serves me well, we haven't taken any money out of that count yet this year because it has to come back to council for approval in any case. Mr. Thériault, do you have an answer in front of you? Is that what you think as well? Yes, it is. Perhaps, Councillor Gadet, you were thinking of the FIFA that's being held, but that's not the unspecified fund. So this fund is still intact, yes. So, and it will become 7,500 if we approve this resolution. Councillor, Mr. Béliveau. Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think it was well explained. The event will be held at the Arts and Culture Center here in Dieppe. Another reason that we could add to the reasons why it's being held here in Dieppe is that it's going to help in this request for funding, but if the city Dieppe wants to promote equal opportunity between men and women, and I think that this event is held every year, and whether it's held in Dieppe or not, I think the city of Dieppe should want to keep a contact with the organization and maintain its relationship with it every year for this event. So I'd like to thank the WYCA for coming to Dieppe, and I'd like to thank the board of directors for their support. Thank you. Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a question. Just to follow up on Councillor Béliveau's words, I think that this is a great opportunity to get our Centre for Arts and Culture better known, because it's fairly unknown in the region. Most of the time, this kind of events are held in Moncton, and I think this is a great opportunity to really show off our centre. And for that reason, I'm going to vote in favor of the resolution. Thank you. Councillor Gaudette. Yes, I agree with the principle, and I'm pleased to see that it will be held here in our Centre for Arts and Culture. I go to these presentations on a regular basis, and it's very impressive to see the quality of the persons who go, but also the scope of services offered in community and in the region. And in that light, and I think it's in early May, the 2nd or 3rd of May, we will be receiving a presentation from the Regional Literacy Committee with budding authors. So if you know anybody who like to write, who are beginners, beginner writers, they can write a maximum of 500 words. It's not a big project, but they would be eligible for the contest. So I would invite you to do it as quickly as possible by calling our Nathalie at the Municipal Library. Thank you. Thank you. And if there are no further questions, all those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Carried. Next point. Next item is a request for financing for the debenture. Your Worship, last fall we had adopted an operational budget and a capital budget last December. This evening, this is for all of the projects that were selected. A part of the funding was through a loan from the New-Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation for an amount of $8,111,000. This evening, we'd just like to authorize this funding and then move on to the projects as proposed. Thank you. Who would like to read the resolution? Councillor Leblanc. Thank you, Your Worship. That Council authorizes the City Clerk, the Treasurer, or the Mayor to issue and sell to the New-Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation a Municipality of Dieppe debenture in the amount of $8,111,000 pursuant to the conditions stipulated by the New-Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation, and further authorizes that the Municipality of Dieppe agrees to issue post-dated checks payable to the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation as and when they are requested in payment of principal and interest charges on the above debenture, and I so move it. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Leblanc, seconded by Councillor Thibodeau on the question. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Carried. As presented. It's easy to spend $8 million. Next item, planning and development. The rezoning project, Dieppe Boulevard, Yvonne Street, Valmont Crescent. Your Worship, we have two reports that were requested in the rezoning bylaw process, both one for the noise and one for the site planning in the buffer zone. I would ask Mr. Frenette to please give us the highlights of these reports to inform the public. And then following that, we have a third element that would be that no deliveries be permitted between 11:01 p.m. and 6:59 a.m. as agreed upon by the developer and the citizens. But first of all, Mr. Frenette is going to present the highlights of the project. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. As the director announced, there were two conditions that had to be presented to council before the adoption of the bylaw. The first one was condition number 7. I'll start with condition number 7 and then I'll come back to condition number 2. Condition number 7 was that no permit be issued unless a noise study be completed to identify acceptable mitigation measures for any development, and including an anti-noise wall and so on. We received a study done by Stanpec, and the conclusion in this study, if you want to show it on the screen, you'll see what is being proposed. This firm identified 6 properties that may have a noise problem, noise that would be above the allowable decibels according to the province of Nova Scotia guidelines. But of the 6 properties as identified, by proposing some landscaping that I'll show you in a second, Stantec would propose that a wall of 115 meters long be built. That's what you see in red behind building A here. And this wall, anti-noise wall, would measure 4 meters high. Now, why 4 meters? The study indicated that the 4 meters, the noise would be able to go into the second floor of buildings behind if it were any lower. So in order to take the second floor of the houses into account, it had to be a 4 meter high wall. And in the report that you've received, you'll see that the decibels become acceptable according to the standards. Currently, there was no need to integrate a noise barrier for the daytime, but in the evening and nighttime, there was the need to build this noise barrier, this wall. So the conclusion of this study is a wall, a noise wall, that measures 115 meters long, as you see in red on the screen, and it would be a maximum of 4 meters high. Any questions on this? We'll go one at a time. Councillor Béliveau. Thank you, Your Worship. If I understand correctly, then this wall that measures 4 meters high, does that exclude any landscaping and tree planting? If you allow me, Your Worship. As identified in the report, the planting of trees will have an aesthetic impact. But in terms of the noise, no, the wall is necessary. Just planting trees or keeping a buffer zone, a 26-meter buffer zone, for example, that wouldn't have been sufficient to cut the noise level, and that's identified in the report. So the wall is necessary, not only the planting of trees, but in terms of the sightliness and the aesthetics, the trees may have a certain impact, but it wouldn't have the anti-noise impact. Now, at what height will be the base of this wall? It would be ground level, at ground level. At ground level, will it be higher than the elevation of the homes? Well, it'll be higher than the second floor, you mean? Well, once again, it depends on the topography, but it's on the site of the project. You can find it. It's at ground level. But if you look at 4 meters high in a house that's 1 story high, 1 story is 9 feet typically. So 4 meters goes up above, up to the second floor. They've identified different possibilities of heights for the wall in the report, but 4 meters is the one they chose. I have another question, Your Worship. The option that was recommended by the consultants, has this or will this recommendation be, has anybody been advised, or have the residents been informed of this or advised, and what was their reaction? Well, it was presented to the residents when we received it. Now, when you asked what their reaction was, the developers were also made aware of it, and the developer and the primary developer is aware of the recommendations of the consultants. Thank you, Councillor Gaudette. I have 2 questions, basically. My first question is to the director. All of the requirements as requested by council and the parties involved, have all of these requirements been met in this resolution that we have here this evening? Well, as you know, Mr. Gaudette, there are certain conditions that will follow third reading. And if the developer or the future owner is not able to meet these conditions, well, then the rezoning does not take place. Let's say that tomorrow morning the project is going forward, it's your wish, it goes to the registration bureau, it's registered, the zone changes, but if the promoter cannot meet the conditions within a prescribed time frame, the zoning returns to what it was originally. So yes, some of the conditions come up afterwards. Yeah, well, I agree with you, but my question is, are they clearly expressed here in this resolution? Well, according to my interpretation, according to what I've seen of the conditions as recommended, I'm comfortable with these conditions. But if you want to modify them, it's if something is not clear enough to you. Well, I know that there is the whole file is progressing in terms of some of the details, but I have another question. The wall is the red line here on the screen. Did I understand correctly? Yes.
It seems a little short. Is there a reason why there's not another 10 meters, especially on the top side? And I don't exactly know why there's a curve rather than continuing to include other elements that could be noisy. Well, this is according to the drawing that I see, my interpretation of it. Your Worship, I myself did not write the report. They identified 6 properties. You have the figures on the screen, the dots, the figures are not necessarily clear, but these are the 6 properties as such. With what is being suggested as a wall, it creates the required result for the sound, for the 18-wheelers who would have access to the rear of the building instead of. And concerning part of the question why it didn't necessarily continue, right now, if we look at the setback, we're talking about 26 meters. On the other hand, if we go farther, we go to 40 meters, sometimes to 50 meters. So that could create problems. That's why it wasn't part of it. In any case, I notice that the wall does seem a little short. And the other thing is that, is there a reason why there's a break in the plantation of trees? Your Worship? Maybe it's at page 53. Maybe we could explain it when we get there. Maybe if we could finish with one of the conditions before we go to another one. Well, it's a question of noise, partly. It's simple. I'll just jump to the other condition. Well, before going to the other condition, I'd really like to finish off with this one because Councillor Thibodeau has a question. So maybe we can come back to it afterwards, Mr. Godet. Thank you, Your Worship. How are we going to make sure that the conditions will be respected? Are we going to establish that the work is going to be done on the buffer zone before, and then we'll work on the building? Because I'm saying, once the building is there, if the other work hasn't been done, and then they decide that they don't do it, what could we do in such a case? If we look at the condition, there are a couple of conditions, but if we look at the condition that we're talking about today, the trees, obviously the trees will have to be planted before we put the noise barrier, because we'll need access from the land, rezoned land. Concerning the other conditions, it'll be our responsibility to make sure that during the project the requirements or the conditions are respected, and if ever one condition is not respected, then it's a question of legality. It's a question of stopping the work. So we could always revoke the permit. It's a question of work. It's the power that we have in the municipality. So there is a mechanism. They have to follow things at the letter. Thank you. Now, for the other condition.
L'autre condition, c'est au niveau.
So the other condition is with the landscaping. As you can see, it is
Trey Studio qui a préparé
it's a Trace Studio that prepared the landscaping. So for what is being proposed by the landscaping architect, it's a plantation of different types of trees, basically rose bushes, Japanese. Along, well, what you see here is a representation of 98 bushes, rose bushes, that are being suggested for integration into the site. At a certain level of maturity, these rose bushes will hide the noise barrier. And then this will answer Mr. Godet's question. At certain places, there is no plantation. This is where you see white spaces like this here. There's no plantation. It is because there is already there mature plantations. So it has been requested that these trees remain. Where there are suggested trees or bushes, This is where there are pockets of zones with no vegetation. Does that answer your question? Yes, thank you. Councillor Leblanc.
Maire,
Thank you, Your Worship.
le mur sonore.
Question of clarification. The noise barrier is on the property line of the developer. Mr. Leblanc, if we look at the property line, there's the common line between the developer and the residences there. The wall is being suggested at a distance, minimum distance of 26 meters, and there are other sections where it's wider than that.
Ce bord-là, je pense que le niveau d'élévation
On that side, the level of elevation where the noise barrier is lower than the level of elevation of the properties.
C'est sûr qu'il y aura quand même des travaux de dénivellation qui devraient être faits sur le.
They'll have to be work done on the site. It's just that the question is, visually speaking, the backyards of the properties, the noise barrier is going to be higher than the height of the trees or the bushes. Right now, having been on the site and seen the existing trees, I would say that the answer is no. I'm not saying that we can't see between the trees. It's one of the reasons why with the planting of trees that is being suggested that eventually this should hide the noise barrier.
dans ta cour arrière, le mur ne serait pas à
So the wall wouldn't be 2 meters higher than the height of the trees, for example. I can't really answer with any type of certainty. I looked at the elevation, and I'm trying to imagine with the 4 meters if the noise barrier is within the height of the trees, or is it higher than the trees? And I wasn't able to find the answer. I thought maybe you might have the elevations yourself here, the lower ones and the higher ones.
l'élévation est là, puis le mur va faire qu'est-ce qui est.
But if the elevation is there and the noise barrier accomplishes what it's supposed to accomplish, then we'll have to see the elevations with the drainage plan also at the same time. All right, thank you. There must have been a certain elevation line suggested or proposed to be able to work out the measurements and to realize that the 4 meter noise barrier is going to do what it's supposed to do. That was the idea, because since the beginning Mr. Frenette was saying that it's approximately at the height of the second floor. I mean, if you're on the ground and the wall is at the level of the second floor, well, it's pretty high. Considering that there's a 26 meter distance, which wasn't the case when we were talking about a berm, basically at that time we were really in the common limit. Right now we have a setback of 26 meters to the noise barrier. Okay, thank you. Mr. Thibodeau, okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. The choice of tree types, was that selection made by the firm Stantec as being the best to absorb noise, or it's a question of aesthetics? As I mentioned earlier, and as it's written in the report on the noise, trees have a very minimal incidence on the noise. On the other hand, they've been requested to have evergreens as opposed to the birch or white pine and bushes. The result of the study is that the noise barrier is necessary no matter what the types of trees are being planted. It'll just the evergreens will have a positive incidence on the noise, and evergreens grow tall. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Alors, si vous voulez continuer, Monsieur Frenette, sur
Si on regarde
So, Mr. Fernand, if you want to go on. All right, if we look at the next plan, the landscaping plan, this is a better point of view. And here we are identifying the types of trees. Japanese rose bushes and birch. And, so here, maybe in the light of Mr. Albert's question, the zone to the east, we're talking about a buffer zone. It's to the east or to the south of the noise barrier, but also south of the parking spots. This whole zone here, if you accept the plan that is being suggested, well, these trees will have to be kept eternally in this space, not only in the 26 meters also, but in the space that is also deeper than 26 meters. They will have to be conserved, they are preserved. I think that summarizes pretty well. Thank you, and I see that there's been something else added in the file, a request by the developer to obtain an extension. Yes. It wasn't identified in the recommended measures, but in the background of the request, there is a request to you. As you know, one of the conditions, condition number 4, it was being asked that the building A be completed in a time frame of 2 years. The request is that we extend it to 3 years, so in other words, an extra year to have the completion of the work for building A, which would be the same time frame that had been identified for other buildings on the site. So that's the request that's being addressed to you.
Merci. Alors, s'il n'y a pas d'autres...
Thank you. So if there are no other questions, then Mr. Belleville. Thank you, Your Worship. I think the question that has to be asked is, what was the reason for going from 2 years to build a big box building and to allow them 3 years? Is there a rationale for that? I mean, I can imagine what type of reasons there could be, but I'd like to have some more information. Okay, so on your side or on the promoter's side? Well, what I have in the memo is actually the memo of the developer. Maybe we could ask the developer for the reason. Good evening, Michel Leblanc. So they asked for a 3rd year just to make sure that they have enough time to do everything that has to be done, the research, and basically to have the building on the site. Their end of year is end of May, so they just want to make sure that if it's in the May's budget that they have a full year. So that means that 2006, they're not sure if they're going to afford, so that just gives them 2017 for it. So it basically gives them kind of a buffer zone also. They believe that they'll be able to start in 2016, but it'll give them a buffer zone. They didn't ask for the extensions for other buildings. They're going to do everything at the same time. It's just for that building. And they also want to start maybe renting things out early so that those buildings being built will not stay empty for too long. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Leblanc.
OK. Alors, pour...
So, for the resolution, I believe if the council wishes, then they'll need to have amendments to the resolution if we accept the request of the developer. If not, then we'll proceed with the resolution as it is. So someone to read the resolution. Mr. Beliveau. Your Worship, that further to the project relating to the zoning bylaw Z-8-Z41, the Council accepted landscaping plan entitled Fox Creek Commercial Development Landscaping Plan LP1 and LP2, prepared by the firm of Trace Studios, dated March 18th, 2015, which meets the following condition number 2A, accepted by the Municipal Council on February 23rd, 2015. To provide that following rezoning, the above-mentioned lots and any development thereon be developed or used in compliance with the following conditions. A, that a detailed landscaping plan illustrating all proposed mitigation measures along the eastern boundary of the property in the proposed bylaw be submitted for council approval prior to third reading of bylaw Z-8-41. That council accept the sound mitigation measures recommended in the study entitled Acoustic Assessment, Proposed Sobeys Development in Dieppe, New-Brunswick, prepared by the firm of Stantec Consulted Limited, dated March 10, 2015, which meets the following condition number 7, accepted by the Municipal Council on February 23, 2015. That no permit be issued for development on the above-mentioned land unless a noise study be completed to identify acceptable mitigation measures for any development, including driveways located fewer than 30 meters from the boundary of the property, and that the recommended measures be implemented by the developers subject to the satisfaction of planning and development and council through a development agreement, and that council accept the addition of condition number 9 proposed during the meeting held on February 17, 2015 between the residents and the Planning and Development Department personnel. 9, that no delivery be permitted on the side and at the rear of Building A between 11:01 p.m. and 6:59 a.m. So moved. Moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by... moved by Councillor Beliveau, seconded by Councillor Brito. Mr. Leblanc, on the question. I'm seconding, and I'm going to be suggesting an amendment to the resolution. My motion is that the council accept the request of the developer to modify condition number 4, accepted on the 23rd of March 2015, so that building A be completed in a time frame of 3 years instead of 2 years. Condition number 4 was being read as such, that building A, as on the plan, be completed in a time frame of 2 years starting from the date of registration of the bylaw, and that building should have a minimum of 5,389 square meters, equal to 58,000 square feet, a floor plan. Otherwise, the land zoning will be returned to L3, low average density residential. And the English section will be added then. Do you want me to read it, Your Worship? No, it's not necessary. Okay, thank you. So moved by Mr. Leblanc. Somebody to second it, Councillor Cormier. Seconded by Councillor Cormier. So on the amendment, those in favor? Questions, first of all, on the amendment? If not, those in favor? Signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded nay. So the amendment is carried. Now, for the resolution as it has been amended, on the question? No questions? All those in favor of the resolution as it has been amended, signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded nay. The resolution 10.2.1 has been accepted, carried as amended. Thank you. Now we go to 10.3 on nominations. Mr. Melanson. On the Advisory Committee of Francophonie, Melissa Daigle for a term ending December 31st, 2016. Thank you for this resolution. Somebody to read the resolution? Mr. Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. That Councillor appoint Melissa Daigle on the Advisory Committee on La Francophonie for a term ending December 31st, 2016. So moved. Moved by Councillor Brideau, seconded by Councillor Thibodeau on the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. Carried as moved. We're going to go now with municipal bylaws. Bylaw Z-8-41.
Yvonne et Croissant Valmont, 11.1.
11.1.1, reading in its entirety. Who is going to go for it? Councillor Cormier. Thank you. Bylaw number Z-8-41. Bylaw to amend the City of Dieppe zoning bylaw. The Council of the Municipality of Dieppe duly assembled and acts as follows. A bylaw to adopt the City of Dieppe zoning bylaw, being bylaw number Z-8, enacted on the 14th day of April 2008 and filed in the Westmoreland County Registry Office as number 254-67771 on April 25th, 2008, is hereby amended as follows. Schedule A, dated January 31st, 2008, entitled Zoning Map, whenever it is mentioned in the text of the zoning bylaw, is amended by the map hereto attached as a Schedule A-34. And I move it in its entirety. Seconded by Councillor LeBlanc on the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. Bylaw number Z-841 has been carried in its entirety. Now, for a third and last reading by title only, Mr. Cormier. Bylaw number Z-841, a bylaw to amend the City of Dieppe zoning bylaw. So moved in its third reading. Moved by Councillor Cormier, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. Zoning bylaw Z-848 for Dieppe Boulevard has been accepted and carried in its third and final reading. Item number 12, notice of motion. None. Inquiries and announcements by members of council. I believe that we're going to start on my left tonight, Mr. Belleville. Thank you, Worship. Because it's my privilege to start this section, I would like to congratulate the two winners of excellence for entrepreneurs in Dieppe. A very beautiful evening. Well, good entertainment, good discussion with the business people of our beautiful city. So that's it, Your Worship. Thank you. Once again, congratulations to Hugo Vida for emerging companies and Bounty Foods for the award of excellence. Thank you. Mr. Thibodeau, thank you, Your Worship. Just one item tonight. I believe that there will be one meeting. There's a benefit evening that is being organized for a girl who's lost both her arms and her legs. So I think that we should all, and I invite all citizens of Dieppe to participate in this benefit evening for this family who does not have the means to be able to meet all the needs for this child. So that's all for me. Thank you. Thank you for the information. Councillor Cormier. Nothing tonight, Your Worship. Councillor Godet. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I had the privilege of participating in the International Evening of the students at the community college here in Dieppe. It was a very interesting evening, very educational at the same time. One of the elements that I wanted to mention was that the director, who according to me is headed towards a position with even more responsibility provincially, but I believe he would wish that his replacement would find a way to involve the community of Dieppe. So it's a challenge that is there, and certainly concerning the programming, our programming, I believe that we could be more present with the community college, which would probably be very happy to have activities and exchanges between the cultural programming and activities of the municipality and the college. I also had the opportunity to speak and to congratulate them for their award at the Excellence Awards for their contribution to the community. Something that they do in the for them, it would be a good idea to get involved more with the people of the community. The Regional Literacy Council is setting up a contest, not necessarily for young people, but for emerging authors, emerging writers. So I think they're requesting a text of 500 words. So it's an interesting contest. So you could contact Madame Nathalie at the Dieppe Municipal Library. So that's it for me tonight, Your Worship. Thank you. I'm sure that the Councillor Godet was also earlier during Saturday at a conference on racism. Oh, you still have 1 minute. I wouldn't want to deprive you of this. Oh, that's a historical moment. Hey, listen, I said a minute, don't waste it. Yes, last Saturday in the morning there was a round table on awareness, and I would say even more, to explain what the challenges are in the field of integration of new arrivals, especially ones of different color. I believe that the text that was presented by Francis Young is available somewhere. Yeah, it was sent to us maybe in newspapers. Yeah, it was sent to us by email today by the Commission. And once again next week, because we're talking about another effort in awareness related to the awareness month for new arrivals, especially for black new arrivals.
Councillor Dallaire. Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing this evening. Thank you, Councillor Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to tell people in my ward, District Number 1, that I will be away for the whole month of April, but I will be back here early May. I hope you have a good end of winter. I hope you won't have any more storms while I'm away, but please be patient and don't let winter get you down. Don't let winter depress you. Have a good evening. Thank you. Councillor Leblanc. Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to take a moment. I think we got an email about the Commandos to congratulate them because they reached the finals. The schedule just came out. I'll go through it very quickly. There are 7 games. I don't think we'd have to go to 7 probably in order to win, but the first game would be on the 26th of March at 7:30 p.m. at the Arthur J. Leblanc Arena. And then on the Saturday, 28th of March at 7:30 p.m. at the Miramichi Civic Center. The third game would be here, again at the arena, on Tuesday, the 31st of March at 7:30 p.m. Fourth game would be on April 2nd, Thursday, at 7:30 p.m. in Miramichi at the Civic Center. The fifth game, if necessary, will be played on the Saturday, April 4th at 7:30 p.m. at the Arena Arthur J. Leblanc. The sixth game, if necessary, will be on April 6th at 7:30 p.m. at the Miramichi Civic Center. And the last and seventh game, if necessary, on the Tuesday, the 7th of April at 7:30 p.m. at the arena here, Arthur J. Leblanc. Thank you. And yes, just for your information, a good number of us are going to be in Campbellton in May for the semi-annual meeting of the Cities of New Brunswick Association. And we won our bet. But there was no money exchanged, of course, but we won our bet. And so the Mr. Ian Como, Deputy Mayor of Campbellton, will have to wear the Commandos sweater throughout the weekend. And I think we'll probably put a broom in his back rather than a number, because we won in 4. But, Mr. Godet, well, there's something that might be of interest to the community. This week will be the meeting of the parishes, and the Dieppe parishes are in the midst of assessing what they can do and how they can do it over the next few years. This will be affecting what goes on in the municipality. So I think it'll be next Thursday evening at the Sainte-Thérèse at 7 p.m. next Thursday night. Thank you. And the recognition award, as Councillor Godet mentioned, to the community college, and it was really what led to the development of the municipality over the last almost 30 years. But I also would like to point out the conference that was held on the integration of immigrants in the workplace. No, it will be held tomorrow at the Arts and Culture Center tomorrow at noon. And once again, this is another event during this week of consideration for immigrants. All integration of immigrants must begin with their finding a job. I mean, it's the same thing for everybody. I mean, if you don't have a job, it's very difficult to integrate into any community. So on that, have a good evening. That wraps up the regular public meeting of Dieppe Council. We are going to move directly into Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies. And I would ask the Deputy Mayor, Mr. Thibodeau, to please replace me for a few minutes.